when three helpless puppies cried out for help in the middle of the forest. Keanu Reeves never imagined that his peaceful retreat would turn into a life-or-death battle against the wilderness. What began as a quiet escape from Hollywood soon escalated into a dramatic struggle for survival. As Keanu found himself racing against time to save not only the pups, but their exhausted mother, trapped, injured, and vulnerable to the dangers lurking in the wild. In this fight for life, Keanu would face challenges far greater than he ever expected, proving that sometimes, even the greatest actors must step into the role of a true hero. Keanu stood frozen for a moment, his breath catching in his throat. The sight before him was unlike anything he'd ever encountered. The mother dog, once full of life, now lay in the thick underbrush, her body trembling from exhaustion, her leg caught painfully in a cruel metal trap. The air was still and warm, the faint scent of earth and foliage hanging in the air, as the three puppies huddled together, their eyes filled with an unspoken plea for help. Keanu's heart clenched. He crouched down, his movements slow and deliberate, trying not to startle the injured mother. His mind raced as he assessed the situation. There was no time to waste. The midday sun filtered through the dense canopy above, casting patches of light and shadow on the forest floor. But the tranquility of the scene only served to heighten the urgency. The puppies were shivering despite the warmth of the day, their tiny bodies too weak to fight the fear that had a grip on them. Keanu could see the strain on their little faces, the innocent trust they had placed in him already. And yet, it wasn't just the puppies he had to worry about, he had to save the mother too. He looked at the metal snare holding her captive, the jagged edges biting deep into her flesh. It was clear that whoever had set the trap had no intention of releasing her anytime soon. Keanu clenched his jaw, an overwhelming sense of duty and anger rising within him. These animals had been betrayed by humans, their home turned into a dangerous battlefield, their lives taken for granted. The sounds of the forest around them, birds calling, leaves rustling, seemed to fade as Keanu focused. He knew he had to act quickly. He reached into his pack and pulled out his multi-tool, his hands steady despite the rising pressure. Slowly, he approached the mother dog, speaking in a soft, reassuring tone to calm her. "I'm here to help," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if she could understand the words. Her golden eyes watched him, filled with a mixture of fear and hope. He carefully positioned himself to avoid hurting her further and began working on the snare. Every movement felt like an eternity. The heat of the sun bore down on him, but Keanu didn't stop. He focused only on the task at hand, on freeing this family from the clutches of cruelty and fear. The mother growled low, her body tensing, but she didn't lunge. She was too weak, too tired to resist him. The puppies stayed close, their tiny bodies shaking, sensing that something important was happening, but too young to understand what. Minutes felt like hours as Keanu worked tirelessly to pry the metal apart, the jagged edges scraping against the mother's skin with every pull. She whimpered in pain, but Keanu whispered words of reassurance, trying to calm both her and himself. The world around them seemed to fade as he concentrated on freeing her. Finally, with a loud snap, the snare gave way. The mother dog yelped in relief, her leg finally freed from the trap's vicious hold. Keanu quickly backed away, giving her space to recover. She collapsed onto the ground, her body shivering from both exhaustion and the heat of the day. But the tension in her eyes had softened. She was free, but not safe yet. The sun was still high, the forest teeming with life, but the dangers that lurked in the shadows of the wild were still very real. Keanu knew they had to move, to find shelter before the predators of the forest took notice. He turned to the puppies, whose eyes were wide with gratitude, and with a soft, steady voice, he said, "It's okay, we're going to get out of here." As the mother slowly rose to her feet, Keanu didn't hesitate. He adjusted his pack and began guiding them through the dense forest. Determined to find a safe haven, the weight of responsibility was heavy on his shoulders. But his resolve only grew stronger. He wasn't just saving them from the trap, they had become his mission. And Keanu Reeves, the actor known for playing heroic roles, would become the real-life protector of this fragile family. In a world where survival was no longer a guarantee, Keanu led the injured mother dog and her three puppies deeper into the dense woods. the heavy silence around them broken only by the rustling of leaves underfoot. His heart raced, not just with the physical exertion of the journey but with the weight of the responsibility he felt toward these fragile lives. The sun, though high in the sky, did little to ease the oppressive heat that seemed to cling to the air. The forest, once a place of refuge, now felt ominous, as if the very trees were watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The puppies, though small and weak, kept close to their mother, their tiny bodies brushing against her for comfort. Keanu couldn't help but notice the bond they shared, a silent understanding between them that transcended words. The mother dog, still limping, did her best to keep up, her golden eyes scanning the surroundings, alert to any potential threats. Keanu could feel her unease, her protective instinct on high alert, as though she knew the dangers of the wild all too well. As they moved further into the forest, Keanu's mind raced. The thought of the poachers who had set the trap for the mother dog made his blood boil. He couldn't understand how someone could harm such innocent creatures, especially when the world was already so full of cruelty. But now was not the time for anger. Now, it was about survival. Keanu had to get them to safety. There was no other option. The journey felt endless. The heat, the weight of the responsibility, the unspoken fear from the mother dog and her puppies, it all pressed down on him. But he couldn't stop. He couldn't let them down. As the forest seemed to stretch on forever, he spotted a small clearing ahead, a brief respite from the dense underbrush. He took a deep breath, relieved at the sight. It wasn't much, but it was a place to rest, to gather his thoughts, and to give the mother and her puppies a chance to recover before the next leg of their journey. Keanu settled down on a nearby rock, taking a moment to catch his breath. The puppies immediately huddled together, their little bodies seeking warmth and comfort from each other and their mother. She, though exhausted, lay down beside them, her eyes flicking between the forest around them and her puppies. Ever watchful, Keanu watched them for a moment, the bond between them undeniable. It was a reminder of the power of love and the lengths to which a mother would go to protect her children. As he sat there, gathering his strength for what lay ahead, Keanu couldn't help but feel a sense of connection to these animals. They had endured so much, yet they were still here, still fighting, still surviving. It was a feeling that stirred something deep within him. He realized that, in this moment, he wasn't just helping them. They were helping him too, reminding him of the resilience of life, the strength found in the most unexpected places. Before I share the next part of this incredible journey, where Keanu will face even greater challenges to keep this family safe, I want to connect with you. My amazing viewers, where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever felt that special connection with an animal that goes beyond words, hit that like button, because this story might just make you believe in miracles. Keanu, now more determined than ever, knew they couldn't stay here for long. He needed to get them to safety, away from the dangers that lurked in the shadows of the forest. But as he stood up to continue their journey, a low growl echoed from somewhere in the distance, sending a shiver down his spine. Something was out there, something dangerous, and it was getting closer. Keanu's heart raced as the growl reverberated through the trees, its low, menacing sound sending a chill down his spine. He turned his head, scanning the thick underbrush, but saw nothing, just the shadows dancing on the ground as the wind shifted through the trees. Still, the air felt heavier, charged with an unspoken threat. He couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The mother dog's ears twitched at the sound, and her body tensed, her protective instincts kicking in. Keanu gently placed a hand on her back, trying to calm her. He knew she was just as afraid as he was. But there was no time to dwell on fear. They had to move. He motioned for the mother and her puppies to follow, leading them carefully through the clearing and back into the dense forest. The journey was slow, the path winding and treacherous. But Keanu kept his focus, his mind laser sharp. Every step felt like a race against time. The growl had rattled him, and though he didn't want to show it, he could feel the weight of the forest closing in around them. The puppies trotted along behind him, their small paws making faint sounds against the dirt and leaves. Keanu couldn't help but glance over his shoulder every few moments, his eyes scanning the shadows. The forest was too quiet, too still. It was as though the trees were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. The air, once warm and thick with the scent of the earth, now felt colder, almost unnatural. Every crack of a twig underfoot seemed louder than it should be. And Keanu couldn't shake the nagging thought that someone, was watching them. Then, just as they neared a narrow pass between two large rocks, the mother dog suddenly stopped. Her body went rigid, and she growled low in her throat, her golden eyes fixed on a dark shape moving toward them through the trees. Keanu's pulse quickened as he followed her gaze. There, emerging from the shadows, was a massive figure, a wild animal, its eyes gleaming with hunger. A jaguar. Its powerful body moved with fluid grace as it stepped into the clearing, its coat a striking pattern of black rosettes against the darkened forest. The creature's gaze locked with Keanu's, and for a moment, neither of them moved. The jaguar's low growl was a warning, its predatory stare unwavering. Keanu instinctively stepped in front of the mother dog and her puppies. His body tensed, his heart pounding in his chest. The jaguar's eyes flickered briefly to the puppies, its nostrils flaring as it scented the air. It was hungry, and it wasn't about to let them go without a fight. Keanu felt the adrenaline surge through him as he tried to size up the situation. The jaguar was too close, too dangerous. It was faster than him, stronger than him, and if it attacked, there would be no way to fight it off without putting them all in more danger. He needed to think, and fast. His eyes darted around, looking for anything that could be used as a weapon, anything that could buy them just a few seconds to escape. But the jaguar wasn't waiting. It crouched, preparing to strike, its muscles coiling like a spring ready to snap. Keanu took a deep breath, steadying his shaking hands, and in that moment, everything seemed to freeze. The jaguar's eyes narrowed, and it lunged, faster than Keanu could react. Would Keanu be able to protect the family in time? Or would the jaguar's strength prove to be too much? What will Keanu do when faced with the primal force of the wild? In a heartbeat, the jaguar's powerful body shot forward, its massive paws slamming into the ground as it aimed directly for the puppies. Keanu's instincts kicked in, and without thinking, he threw himself forward, grabbing a nearby branch from the ground and swinging it with all his strength. The jaguar's sleek form barely flinched as the branch made contact, but it gave Keanu just enough time to push the puppies behind him. The mother dog, too, growled fiercely, positioning herself between her young and the predator, but she was too weak to do much more than bark a warning. The jaguar paused, momentarily confused by the sudden resistance, its golden eyes flashing with annoyance. It wasn't used to being challenged. With a flick of its tail, the creature circled Keanu, its eyes calculating, waiting for an opening. The tension in the air was unbearable. Keanu's every nerve screamed, urging him to act, to protect the helpless family behind him. But the jaguar was a beast of speed and precision, one that could kill in seconds. Keanu backed up slowly, the branch still raised, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The jaguar's growls grew louder, its muscles rippling beneath its coat as it prepared for another strike. Keanu knew he couldn't rely on strength alone. He needed to outwit it. His eyes darted around the clearing, searching for something, anything that could turn the tide. In that split second, he spotted a large rock just beyond the jaguar's reach. With no time to lose, Keanu dropped the branch, making a sudden motion that distracted the jaguar long enough for him to sprint toward the rock. The jaguar hesitated for a fraction of a second before it pounced, its sharp claws outstretched, but Keanu was already behind the rock, using it as a shield. The jaguar, frustrated, circled the rock, its low growl vibrating the air. Keanu's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to steady his breath, the weight of the situation crashing down on him. Every second mattered. The puppies were counting on him, and so was the mother dog. Keanu spotted a gap between the jaguar and the boulder, just wide enough to slip through. He clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and, in one swift motion, lunged toward the jaguar's blind side. The jaguar reacted almost instantly, but Keanu was faster. He grabbed a jagged stick from the ground, jabbing it toward the beast. It wasn't much, but it was enough to force the jaguar to recoil, momentarily stunned by the sharp point. Keanu's quick thinking gave him just enough time to scoop up the puppies and shove them toward the mother dog, urging them to run. "Go," he shouted, his voice hoarse but commanding. The puppies, trembling with fear, obeyed without hesitation, scurrying toward the safety of the dense underbrush. The mother dog, though still weak, followed closely behind them, casting one last look at Keanu before vanishing into the shadows. The jaguar, enraged, turned its focus back to him, its eyes burning with fury. Keanu had bought them a moment of safety, but he knew the danger wasn't over. The jaguar was relentless, and he couldn't afford to let his guard down. With the adrenaline coursing through his veins, Keanu's mind raced. The only chance he had now was to get to higher ground, where he could gain some leverage. He spotted a low tree nearby, its branches just within reach. It wasn't much, but it might be enough to level the playing field. With a burst of energy, Keanu sprinted toward the tree, the jaguar hot on his heels. He reached the base, grabbing hold of the lowest branch, and in one smooth motion, he hoisted himself up. The jaguar leapt after him, its claws scraping against the tree trunk. But Keanu was already out of its reach, his legs dangling from the branch. He looked down at the beast below him, his heart racing, and waited for the next move. Keanu's breath came in shallow gasps as he clung to the branch, his body trembling with tension and exhaustion. Below him, the jaguar prowled, its massive paws pressing silently into the forest floor as it fixed its predatory gaze on him. Keanu knew that this was no ordinary predator. This was a creature of the wild, swift, calculating, and incredibly dangerous. The jaguar's eyes never left him as it stalked around the base of the tree, its sleek body moving with an eerie silence. Keanu's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to focus. The mother dog and her 3 puppies were still hiding in the thick underbrush just a short distance away, their presence the only thing keeping him grounded in the madness of the moment. Keanu knew that if he didn't act fast, they would be in grave danger. The jaguar's growl rumbled in the air, low and threatening, as it began to circle the tree. Keanu's pulse raced. He was trapped. The jaguar, though clearly focused on him, was a deadly predator, and Keanu knew that in a direct confrontation, the odds would be against him. The creature was faster, stronger, and had far more experience in hunting than Keanu ever could. But he couldn't afford to show fear. The puppies were counting on him. The mother dog was depending on him. As the jaguar moved closer, Keanu's eyes darted around the clearing, searching for anything that might give him an edge. Then, his gaze landed on a large rock just beyond the jaguar's reach. Without wasting another second, Keanu dropped the branch and, in one fluid motion, sprinted toward the rock. The jaguar, quick as a flash, pounced after him, but Keanu was already behind the rock, using it as a shield. The jaguar, momentarily stunned by the sudden movement, circled the rock, its growls echoing in the still air. Keanu's breath came faster as he crouched behind the boulder, his mind racing for a plan. His first thought was to use the rock to his advantage, but the jaguar wasn't giving him much time. It was waiting for him to make a mistake. Keanu scanned the surroundings, his heart hammering in his chest. The jaguar's growls grew louder as it pressed closer, and Keanu realized that his time was running out. He needed a distraction, a way to throw the jaguar off its hunt. Without thinking, he grabbed a jagged stick from the ground, holding it tightly in his hand. In one swift motion, he jabbed the stick toward the jaguar, forcing it to retreat momentarily. The jaguar's eyes widened, and it hesitated, giving Keanu a brief but precious moment to act. "Go!" Keanu shouted toward the underbrush where the puppies and their mother were hiding. His voice was firm, commanding, though his own nerves were beginning to unravel. The puppies, sensing the urgency in his tone, scrambled out from their hiding spot and bolted toward the thick trees. The mother dog followed closely behind, her exhausted legs struggling to keep pace but driven by an instinct to protect her young. Keanu didn't waste a moment. He turned to face the jaguar once again, his heart racing with adrenaline. The creature growled low, its muscles coiling, preparing to strike. Keanu had bought them a few precious seconds, but now he was on his own. The jaguar, enraged by the threat and the sudden movement, turned its full attention back to him. its eyes burning with fury. The next attack would come fast. And Keanu knew it. There was no time to waste. He had to get to higher ground. To find a way to use his surroundings to his advantage. Keanu spotted a low tree nearby, its branches hanging just within reach. It wasn't much, but it was enough. With a burst of energy, he sprinted toward the tree, the jaguar hot on his heels. As he reached the trunk, he jumped, grabbing hold of the lowest branch and hoisting himself up. The jaguar leapt after him, its claws scraping against the bark. But Keanu was already out of reach. Hanging from the branch above, he looked down at the jaguar, its sleek form crouched below him, eyes locked onto him with an intensity that made Keanu's blood run cold. The jaguar's growls were growing louder, more urgent, and Keanu knew he couldn't stay here forever. His body ached from the climb, and he could feel the tension building in the air. The jaguar would not give up. Not now, not until it got what it wanted. Keanu gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on the branch. He was stuck for now, but the battle was far from over. Keanu clung to the branch, his body tense and bruised from the frantic scramble to escape the jaguar's deadly pursuit. Below him, the beast prowled in silent circles, its eyes still locked on Keanu, its patience wearing thin. The jaguar's muscles rippled with every movement, a constant reminder of how far he had pushed himself to get away from it. The adrenaline was beginning to fade, replaced by a sharp, aching exhaustion that gnawed at Keanu's bones. He glanced down toward the forest floor, where the mother dog and her puppies had taken shelter in the dense brush. He could hear the faint sound of their breathing, their soft whimpers and rustles as they tried to find a safe place to rest. They were safe, for now, but Keanu knew this brief moment of peace would not last. The jaguar wasn't the only threat out there. The poachers were still nearby, and he wasn't sure how long he could keep them all safe. His mind raced as he weighed his options. His body was starting to betray him, but he couldn't afford to let up. He had to get them to a safer place, away from both the wild and the human danger that stalked them. The jaguar let out a low growl, snapping Keanu's attention back to the beast below. It was watching him, studying his every move. Keanu's eyes darted around, looking for a way out, but the forest seemed to close in on him. He was stuck. In the distance, he spotted a narrow gap between two large rocks, an opening that could provide a temporary refuge. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give him a moment's respite, enough to regroup and figure out his next move. Without hesitating, Keanu let go of the branch, falling gracefully to the ground. Using the jaguar's distraction to his advantage, he hit the ground with a soft thud, rolling to his feet before sprinting toward the gap. The jaguar growled in frustration, its sharp eyes following Keanu's movements as he darted through the underbrush. Keanu's heart pounded as he reached the narrow gap, his breath coming in heavy bursts. He didn't stop to look back, he couldn't. His only focus now was getting to the shelter. With every step, he could feel the jaguar's presence growing nearer. The hunt was not yet over. He dove into the narrow opening between the rocks, his body pressing against the cold, hard stone as he caught his breath. Inside the small cavern, Keanu took a moment to collect himself. His heart was still racing, but he allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The jaguar couldn't get in here. The gap was too narrow for the predator to follow, and Keanu had finally found a temporary place of safety. He crouched down, trying to steady his breathing, his muscles aching from the strain. The mother dog and her puppies were just a few feet away, nestled in the thick foliage just outside the gap. Keanu could hear their soft breathing, their tiny bodies huddled together for warmth. He was relieved to see that they were safe, for now. He had managed to protect them from the jaguar, but the poachers were still out there. They were just as much of a threat as the wild animals. And Keanu knew that he couldn't keep them hidden forever. His mind flashed back to the poachers' voices earlier, the way they had come so close to finding him. He couldn't afford to wait much longer. Keanu knew that they needed to get to the wildlife sanctuary. He had to get them there. But the journey was long, and the dangers of the forest were endless. It was a race against time, and every step forward could mean the difference between life and death. Keanu stood up, brushing the dirt off his clothes, and turned toward the narrow gap leading back into the forest. The jaguar was still prowling outside, But Keanu could feel it retreating for now. No doubt waiting for another opportunity to strike. He wasn't going to give it that chance. With a deep breath, he turned to the puppies and their mother. Determination hardening in his chest. He couldn't stop now. They had made it this far. And they would make it the rest of the way. Together. With one last glance toward the shadows of the forest, Keanu set his sights on the horizon. The road ahead was fraught with danger. But he was ready to face it. He had no choice. He had become more than their protector. He had become their lifeline. Keanu's legs burned as he pushed forward through the dense forest. The underbrush thick with vines and thorns that tore at his clothes and skin. The path ahead seemed endless. But Keanu didn't falter. Behind him, the mother dog and her puppies followed closely. Their fragile bodies exhausted but determined. The journey to safety had been long and filled with obstacles. Yet they were still moving, still fighting for survival. The wildlife sanctuary was their last hope. But Keanu knew that the danger wasn't over yet. The poachers were still out there, lurking in the shadows, and the jaguar's presence was always a threat. He had managed to keep the family safe so far. But there was no guarantee they would make it without another fight. Every step, every decision, carried the weight of their future. Despite the overwhelming odds, Keanu couldn't help but feel a strange sense of peace in the midst of their struggle. The bond between him and the mother dog, along with the unwavering loyalty of the puppies, had created something he hadn't expected, a family. The forest no longer felt like a foreign place. It had become their battleground, their home, and Keanu had come to realize that he was no longer just their protector. He was their lifeline, the one thing standing between them and the unforgiving wilderness. As they reached the edge of the forest, Keanu saw a flicker of hope. The sanctuary gates were in sight, a distant but tangible promise of safety. His heart raced as he pushed through the final stretch, urging the dogs forward. They had come so far, and they couldn't stop now. They were close, so close. But just as the gates came into view, a sharp cry cut through the air, loud, desperate, and unmistakably human. Keanu's blood ran cold. It was the poachers. They had tracked them down. Without hesitation, Keanu dropped to his knees, pulling the puppies close and signaling for the mother dog to stay low. He scanned the area, his mind racing as he searched for a plan. The poachers were closing in, and there was no time to waste. He needed to make a stand. Keanu grabbed a nearby branch, his hands steady despite the mounting fear. He had come too far to let them take what he had fought so hard to protect. The mother dog, sensing his resolve, growled low in her throat, her body tensing in preparation for the battle ahead. Keanu stood tall, his eyes fixed on the poachers as they approached, their rifles raised and their faces hidden behind scarves and goggles. "Leave them alone," Keanu shouted, his voice firm and commanding. The poachers paused, their attention momentarily distracted by his defiance. It was all the opening Keanu needed. He sprinted toward them, swinging the branch with all his might, knocking one of the poachers to the ground. The other two immediately raised their rifles. But Keanu was already on the move, ducking and weaving to avoid their shots. The fight was chaotic, adrenaline coursing through Keanu's veins as he fought not just for his life, but for the lives of the animals he had grown to love. The poachers were skilled, but Keanu was fueled by something stronger. His determination, his love for the creatures he had saved, drove him forward, pushing him to do whatever it took to protect them. In the heat of the struggle, the mother dog leapt into action, lunging at one of the poachers and knocking him off balance. The cubs, too, seemed to sense the urgency, barking and running to their mother's side, ready to defend. The fight raged on, but Keanu's resolve was unshakable. He struck another poacher, sending him crashing into the dirt. The remaining poacher turned and fled, realizing that he was no match for Keanu's relentless determination. Breathing heavily, Keanu stood tall, surveying the aftermath of the battle. The poachers were down, their weapons scattered across the forest floor. The mother dog and her puppies were safe, their loyalty to Keanu stronger than ever. They had made it, together. The gates of the sanctuary were now within reach. Keanu's chest rose and fell with each labored breath, the weight of the past days settling on his shoulders. He had been through so much, faced down predators, fought off poachers, and traversed a treacherous wilderness. But in that moment, As he stood at the threshold of safety, he knew that he had done it. He had saved them, and in the process, he had saved himself. The sanctuary staff rushed to meet them, their eyes wide with disbelief as they took in the scene before them. Keanu, battered and bruised, standing tall with the mother dog and her puppies at his side. They were finally safe. Keanu helped the staff tend to the mother dog's injuries, ensuring she was properly treated. Her leg, once badly wounded, had healed with the care he had given her, and she was now stronger than ever. The puppies, once so frightened and fragile, were now playful and energetic, running circles around Keanu's feet as they explored their new home. For the first time in what felt like forever, Keanu allowed himself to breathe, to let go of the constant tension that had gripped him for so long. As the days passed, Keanu remained at the sanctuary, helping with the care of the animals and getting to know the staff who had worked tirelessly to protect wildlife. But it was the connection he had forged with the dogs that stayed with him the most. It wasn't just about survival, it was about the bond that had formed between them. A bond that went beyond words. The mother dog, once so terrified and broken, had found her strength again, and in doing so, she had helped Keanu find his own. And so, as the sun set over the sanctuary, Keanu stood at the edge of the forest, watching the mother dog and her puppies play in the soft light. They were free now, no longer hunted by fear or cruelty. They were home. Keanu had given them a chance, and in return, they had given him something he hadn't known he was missing: hope. What an incredible journey we've been on together, right? Keanu's struggle to protect the mother dog and her puppies has truly been a roller coaster of emotions. From facing down a jaguar to taking on ruthless poachers, he's shown us what it really means to fight for survival and love. Now, I want to hear from you. How did this story make you feel? Were you on the edge of your seat when Keanu fought to protect the family? Or did you feel the deep connection between him and the dogs? If you think this story touched your heart, drop a number 2 in the comments below. If it didn't quite hit the mark for you, leave a number 7 and tell me what you'd have liked to see differently. I'm all ears. And if you've loved this adventure, don't forget to subscribe to Tapestry of Worlds for more heartwarming and thrilling stories like this one. Let's continue to weave these incredible tales together, one chapter at a time.